have a message for Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke. If you want to take everyone's AR-15 in America, why don't you swing by my office in Washington, D.C. and start with this one. Come and take it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cold Dead Hands. Please welcome, from Colorado, Congressman Ken Buck and CPAC Executive Vice President Dan Schneider.
Congressman, my name is Dan Schneider. I don't think anybody here has met me before. This is Congressman Ken Buck. If you look back on our screens, you'll see his name scroll by with his ACU rating, 98%. That's based on his votes in Congress. He has been a leader at the state level in Colorado. He's been a leader. When I say a leader, that understates his role. He is fighting. He has incredible bills on Second Amendment. He's got incredible bills that fight for our First Amendment rights to speak as big tech tries to clamp down on everything you think and speak. But the left opposes all of our rights. I don't get it, Congressman. Why does the left oppose us exercising our constitutional rights?
Well, first, Dan, let me just say I feel like the moderator here. I should be interviewing you and making, talk about all the great things you've done at CPAC. And so thank you so much for your work with CPAC. Yeah, there's an interesting political dynamic going on right now. The New York State lost one congressional seat in the redistricting as a result of the census. And so the chairman of the, yeah, I agree with you. The chairman of the Judiciary Committee and the chairman of the Oversight Committee, Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney, were put into the same district. And so they are running against each other. And only one will survive. But the challenge is trying to survive this year in Congress because they're both trying to outdo each other for New York City votes.
All those conservative voters in New York.
Yeah, all those conservative voters in New York City. So Jerry Nadler has offered anti-gun, pro-abortion bills as much as he can and rams them through the Judiciary Committee. Carolyn Maloney is doing the same thing in the Oversight Committee. So
they're trying to win a primary against each other.
Well, and they have great seats to do that. If they're trying to appeal to the left, they're in a chair position. Pelosi is going to pass their bills. Pelosi will be fired, by the way. Pelosi will be gone. Pelosi will not want to wait another 6 or 8 years for the Democrats to get the majority, if they ever get the majority again. So she will retire, and America will be a safer place with Nancy Pelosi out of the way.
Well, Congressman, we've got two of the most liberal people in Congress. And if you look up their ACU ratings, they are just like at 1% out of 100. I don't even know how they got up.
I think 1%. ACU must have made a mistake on that one vote. But.
Well, they were probably protesting. But what's the significance to the Second Amendment? What kind of things are they pursuing, and what are we all at risk of losing if they were to succeed?
Well, here is the party that believes in defunding the police and disarming Americans. And the reason they say they want to disarm Americans is because these bad guys out there with guns are overwhelming the police. And so they defund the police. We're going to have less police at the same time that we're disarming Americans. Makes absolutely no sense. But the bottom line is they don't trust you. They have this great ability to spend taxpayer dollars on their own security teams, well-armed security teams, but then want to disarm you because they don't trust Americans. They don't trust us, but they want to make sure they're protected with plenty of guns. It is the height of hypocrisy. It's what the Democrat leadership in the House and the Senate believe in and are forcing down our throats.
Look, that is a direct attack on representational democracy. They think that they're too good to be deprived of protection from weapons, firearms, but they think that you should never be protected protecting yourself, that you should never be trusted to arm yourselves.
Absolutely right. And that is a fundamental, we have 360 million American gun owners. 360 million. And they want to take away our right to protect ourselves. Most of those gun owners, over 70% of the gun owners will tell pollsters that the reason they own a gun is for protection, self-protection. There are plenty of other reasons, hunting and other sporting reasons, but protection is the #1 reason that gun owners have guns. They want to take our ability to protect ourselves from us.
Congressman, in just a moment, I do want to get to some of the outrageous bills that are being discussed. But you've just made a really important point. The laws that are designed to protect Americans from gun owners only apply to law-abiding citizens. Criminals are going to break the law. And I just want to point out, we have a hero here. Stephen Williford, would you stand, please? If you all know Stephen Williford lived across the street from Southern Springs First Baptist Church when he heard gunfire. There was a criminal who had illegally acquired. Stephen, stand up against. There's a criminal who had illegally acquired a firearm, and he went into a church and started murdering people. And Stephen Williford, who had legally acquired a firearm and is a law-abiding citizen, was able to grab his firearm, his AR, and go across the street, take on the murderer, and take the murderer out. A law-abiding citizen who owned an AR saved countless lives. Congressman, Democrats in Congress want to deprive heroes like Stephen Williford, with Gun Owners of America, by the way, they're a great booth sponsor out here. But this does nothing to stop the criminals. What are some of these bills that they're pursuing, and why in the world would they do it?
Well, let's talk about the history of some of what the Democrats have done that really is counterintuitive and causes problems in America. One of the things that they passed years ago after a school shooting was the gun-free school zones. Well, what do the gun-free school zones do? They tell criminals, they tell violent, evil people that nobody in that school has a gun. So if you go into that school, you will not face resistance. They oppose our efforts as conservatives to try to make sure that teachers or coaches or administrators in the school are trained so that we can have some individuals in the school with guns to try to protect students and teachers in the guns. They will oppose that. The gun bills that they have passed in the recent past, in the last 20, 30 years, have done nothing to reduce violence in this country. At the same time, the very issues that we know cause violence, fatherless homes, drug use, the breakdown in our society, the poor education programs run by teachers' unions in the big cities, all of the social programs that the Democrats have been pushing since this war on poverty that has resulted, by the way, in more poverty in the U.S. than before, all of those social programs are causing the terrible gun violence that we have. They will deny responsibility for that and try to chip away at our Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, when we read about these terrible mass shootings, like here in the Southern Baptist Church, where Stephen Williford stopped the criminal, there are two things that are almost always true. The murderer has illegally acquired the firearm. And here's what is, with almost no exceptions, and it's really sad, these mass murderers usually are young men from fatherless homes. If there's any one thing, it seems to me, that we should do if we want to try to reduce these terrible situations, we have to address the family. We have to address the family.
Absolutely. The family has been the cornerstone of what made America great. You know, you look at the statistics, it was, I believe in the 1960s, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan issued a report on the breakdown of the family, and he focused on black families in America, and he said that we are at a terrible point in our history because 25% of children, black children born in America, are born in single-parent homes, fatherless homes. That number has skyrocketed in the black community and in the white community. The white community now, the rest of America, frankly, more than 25% of children born are born to unwed parents or single-parent homes. That number is startling. It's something that we need to deal with, and it is a direct reflection of the incentives contained in our welfare laws. And we've got to change those incentives if we're going to start dealing with these mass shootings.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. The news media so rarely will cover these basic facts. I don't know why the liberal news media does not want to talk about these essential things about fatherless homes. I know this is not a conversation about poverty, but the single greatest determinant of whether somebody will end up in poverty is whether they are in a two-parent intact home. Right. And then, again, these mass murders, they almost always are young men coming out of fatherless homes.
So I want to mention one thing. After the Parkland shooting in Florida, I brought a group of school superintendents together, and I said to them, do you need federal funds to help harden the schools, to create magnetometers, to do whatever the left was talking about? And they said no. And I said, well, what do you need? And they said, we know who the problem kids are. And in Parkland, there was over 20 law enforcement contacts with the shooter before that shooting at that high school. They said, we know who the problem kids are. And if you notice, many and most, if not a very high percentage of the shootings don't happen in inner cities. They happen in suburban and rural areas. And the reason is that the parents will hire a lawyer. If we kick a kid out, the parents will hire a lawyer and get that kid back in school to the point where we don't want lawsuits and we stop kicking kids out of school. The Department of Education Civil Rights Division will come in and sue a school district for kicking a kid out of school. If you allow us to take these dangerous kids out of the school, you will see a dramatic increase in violent crime. I talked to Secretary of Education DeVos about that. They're moving in that direction. All of that has been scuttled now by the Biden administration. But that was professionals. Those were school superintendents that had spent their lives in this area. They understand you can identify at a very early age young people who are going to commit problems. And what you need to do is they need to be given an education, but they don't need to be in a school where they can acquire a gun and commit a horrible crime like that.
You know, Congressman, we're talking about people who do commit crimes, but just because you commit a crime does not mean you cannot be rehabilitated. And just because you may have committed financial fraud, for example, doesn't mean you can't be rehabilitated. Should somebody who's been convicted of a nonviolent crime have their Second Amendment rights restored?
Well, it's a great point. I have done this in the Colorado legislature and in the United States Congress. I have offered legislation. If you're convicted of bank fraud, tax fraud, the likelihood of you committing a violent crime is the same as any other person out there. Just because you have a felony conviction doesn't mean you're likely to commit a violent crime. The best determinant of committing a violent crime is past violent behavior. And so I have offered legislation that would allow the Second Amendment rights for a felon to be restored after a certain period of time, a nonviolent felon. The ACLU was with me and the NRA was with me. That's a great combination when you can do that in politics and get those two groups with you. Guess who's opposed to it and has killed it every single time in Congress? Senator Chuck Schumer. That surprises everybody, doesn't it? But he will not allow that common sense because what they really want to do is to take away gun rights. This isn't about making America safer. It's about taking guns.
Yeah. So we need to wrap up, but I do want to just make one last comment connected to that. As you all know, we hold CPACs all over the world, in Japan, Korea, Hungary, Israel, etc. When we were in Australia for the first CPAC Australia, a gentleman came up to me and said, Dan, here in Australia, private citizens cannot own firearms. Please make sure that in America you protect your Second Amendment rights, because if you lose your rights, you will lose your government. And if America loses its free government, its republic, the rest of the world will fall. We have a responsibility to protect our Second Amendment rights for the freedom of everyone. Congressman, you're a great hero. Thank you.